Every universe has a creator. For the Marvel Universe, that foundation was laid brick by brick by the king himself, Jack Kirby. Welcome to Ghost Train Comics WTF playlist. Today we're riding back to the mid-1980s to look at the bitter campaign for Jack Kirby's original art and how the community finally forced Marvel to settle. To understand the 1980s fight, you have to understand what original comic art meant back then. Before the 1970s, comic publishers viewed original drawn pages as worthless production waste. They were stacked in dangerous, unheated warehouses, given away to office visitors, or straight up just stolen by staff. Throughout the 1960s, Kirby poured his soul onto more than 8,000 pages of original Bristol board, co-creating Captain America, the Fantastic Four, Thor, the Hulk, the X-Men, and the Avengers. But in 1984, a different kind of battle line was drawn. This wasn't a comic book crossover. This was a brutal, real-world public relations war between Jack Kirby and Marvel Comics. The stakes? The physical return of his original artwork. Marvel told Kirby that he could have a tiny fraction of his art back, but only if he signed a document that essentially stripped him of his dignity and legally erased his legacy as a creator. What followed was one of the most important labor and artistic rights movement in the history of American comic books, right up there with the Siegel and Shuster debacle in the 1970s that almost held up the release of Superman the movie. By the late 1970s and early 80s, independent publishers like Pacific and Eclipse emerged, offering artists their original pages back and paying royalties. Under pressure, Marvel's editor-in-chief Jim Shooter pushed corporate management to begin returning old backstock artwork to creators. It was a step forward until it came to Jack Kirby. When Marvel cataloged their archives, they informed Kirby they could only locate roughly 88 pages of his work out of the more than 8,000 he drew in the 1960s. Barely 1%. But worse than the missing art was the contract Marvel demanded Jack sign before releasing even those measly 88 pages. It wasn't a standard receipt, it was a 4-page legal trap. The release form declared that Marvel owned all copyrights and character concepts in perpetuity. Most insultingly, it didn't even cede ownership of the physical paper to Jack. It stated Marvel was merely granting him physical custody of the art. He was legally just storing his own work on Marvel's behalf. If he wanted his pages, he had to sign away his historical claim to his creations. Kirby, rightfully insulted, refused to sign. For nearly a year, Kirby tried to negotiate quietly with Marvel, asking for a full inventory of what they actually had left. Marvel flatly denied him. Realizing he was getting nowhere against a corporate brick wall, Jack and his fierce protector and wife, Roz Kirby, decided it was time to make some noise. Enter Gary Groth and the Comics Journal. In July 1985, the journal broke the story wide open. They published the brutal details of Marvel's restrictive release form, and they gave the Kirbys a platform to speak directly to the fans, unedited and raw. Jack Kirby, in a direct quote, once said, "I'm not a guy who likes to sue people. I've never sued Marvel. And they claim I'm a guy who's given them trouble. I'm a guy who never gave anybody trouble." The effect was instantaneous. The Comics Journal turned a private legal skirmish into a moral crusade. Fans who grew up on the Fantastic Four suddenly realized the man who drew their childhood was being treated like an unwanted independent contractor by corporate executives. As the story spread, the comics industry did something quite unprecedented. It organized a massive, unified front of artistic solidarity. The industry's biggest stars used their massive leverage to publicize the injustice. Frank Miller, at the absolute height of his industry power with The Dark Knight Returns, went on a tear. He gave speeches at conventions openly shaming Marvel's management on stage. He called Marvel's editors disgraceful, openly shaming, and urged creators and fans alike to boycott the company's projects if they didn't do right by the king. Alan Moore, pulling no punches, spoke about the deep emotional aura Kirby's work had, and how the current corporate ownership was bleeding the creators dry. Even the elder statesman of comics, Will Eisner, stepped into the fray. Eisner wrote directly to Marvel executives, stating flatly that no artist ever intended to give their physical artwork away permanently. Publishers bought the right to print the pages, not own the physical artifacts. At the 1985 San Diego Comic-Con and various Chicago panels, Jim Shooter found himself walking into a hornet's nest. He attempted to defend Marvel's policy, arguing that he was bound by corporate lawyers and the Kirby's camp was bringing copyright threats into a simple art return. But Ross Kirby was in the audience of one of these shows. She stood up and cut Shooter off cleanly, saying, "I hate to interrupt you, but during this entire thing, we've never even tried to get the copyright back from Marvel. It's you people who keep bringing it up." The public shaming of Marvel was total. By 1986, Marvel's corporate parent company, Cadence Industries, was trying to sell Marvel Comics. The last thing they needed was a high-profile, toxic public relations disaster led by the most famous comic creators alive, tanking the company's brand value. The tide finally turned when Jim Shooter and Stan Lee entered direct discussions with Kirby to find a path of least resistance. According to Shooter's own accounts, a major sticking point had become creative credit. Jack wanted sole creator credit on the characters they built, which complicated Stan Lee's long-standing legacy. So Shooter met with Kirby in San Diego and asked the direct question, doesn't Stan deserve some credit? Now, Jack, a pragmatic man at his core, agreed, saying, yeah, he does. They shook on a shared Stan and Jack credit line. In May 1987, the corporate wall cracked. Jack Kirby received and signed a heavily amended, cleaned up release form. The insulting custody language was gone. Within weeks, Marvel returned approximately 1,900 pages of original 1960s artwork to Jack Kirby. It wasn't the full 8,000 much of that was lost to history, floods, or theft. But it was a massive, tangible victory. Jack could finally sell his own historic pages to support his retirement and secure his family's financial future. The Jack Kirby art campaign changed the comic book industry forever, especially on the heels of the calamitous and ultimately victorious campaign that Neil Adams ran on behalf of Siegel and Schuster for the Superman rights credits and a percentage of the profits for the creators. It proved that creators weren't just faithless cogs in a corporate assembly line. By standing together, the community forced a multi-million-dollar publisher to bend the knee to the man who built it. Every time you see an artist today selling their original pages, retaining their rights, or getting a fair credit line on a movie poster, you're looking at the legacy of Jack Kirby's fight. So what do you think of this massive 1980s showdown? Do you think Marvel ever truly made things right with the King? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and keep stoking the fires here in Ghost Train Comics. But until next time, keep reading and talk to you all soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.